Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. Today, I have Christopher LaMagna with me. Christopher is the executive chef at the Babylon Mercantile, a cooking school and shop in Babylon. Christopher's story is very, very deep. He's an ultra marathoner. His training runs, which he does on an almost daily basis, are usually 20 miles or longer. It takes a lot to set a flame that gets somebody to run 20 miles or more consistently. For the second year in a row, most recently, Chris took on an ultra marathon, about 130 miles, starting in Montauk all the way to New York City on foot. Chris, I'm sure there's a lot behind what got you to this point, and we're going to dive into all that. But first and foremost, thank you for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Before we got on and recorded, you had told me that you had only started running recently and during COVID. And, you know, 130-mile ultra, I've been running now for several years. I've got almost 8 marathons under my belt, but I'm still very far away from considering hitting the 100-mile mark. And so let's dive into, maybe before we talk about your story, let's talk about the first time that you set out for a run. When was that?
Yeah, I was at home. I just said, I'm going to go out for a run. I walked outside. I ran maybe a block. I couldn't breathe. And then after that block, I walked a little bit, ran a little bit, walked a little bit, and it just picked up from there every day. It was like, I'm going to add an extra block. And eventually it turned into a mile, and then that mile turned into 5 miles. And then I was doing 10-mile clips every day. And it was kind of fun. So it was cool.
Were you an athlete growing up?
I wasn't an athlete growing up. I was actually kind of a heavy kid. I was like high 200s. And yeah, I wasn't an athlete at all.
Really? And when it came to just your overall wellness, I mean, you're a chef, obviously, so you're around food a lot. Is nutrition top of mind for you, or, you know, was that something that wasn't even, you know, a consideration for you growing up?
So growing up, no, I grew up in an Italian household. We had like chicken Parmesan heroes and a lot of pasta. But for the past like 4 or 5 years, it's been predominantly plant-based, and every so often a little bit of eggs and fish. Got it. So, you know, one thing that I know and that we're going to dive into here is that there's more to this story than the fact that you just kind of picked up on running, you know, in the midst of COVID. You told me at the time you were unemployed, correct? Yeah, I was laid off from the restaurant for about a month and a half. Yeah.
Got it. And were you at the same restaurant at that time?
I was no, I was somewhere else at the time, and we were told to go home I think it was on a Tuesday, and we had nothing to do. There was, you know, you just go home. It was weird. It was unexpected, I would say. Yeah.
Got it. And you know, that's when perhaps the experience of running entered your life. But let's dive a little bit more into some of your background, and how you even got yourself into that situation, or not into that situation, but into becoming a chef. You grew up on Long Island, is that correct?
No, I grew up in Queens, out in College Point, New York.
Got it. Can you give some background on your family?
Yeah, my father and my mom, they're hardworking people. They still work today. I have a older sister, an older brother, and a younger sister as well. Yeah.
Got it. So pretty big family. And you were in the middle there.
I'm the third. Yeah. The black sheep, they call me.
Yeah. And at what point did you decide you wanted to go down this route from a career perspective?
So I decided to go down the food career. Ever since I was little, so around like 12 years old, I had my first job, and it was at like Carvel. And from there, I went into catering, where there was a catering hall like 1 block down, and I cleaned floors, I washed dishes, I did everything. And a couple of years after that, I ran into Chef Mario, and he grabbed me and just taught me everything. It was pretty cool. And And I just went from one restaurant to the next. And I always spent like a year or two at a restaurant, learned as much as I could. And once I felt like I couldn't learn anything else, I chose to move on. It's been great since then. So
From a culinary perspective, do you have any dreams of, owning your own restaurant one day, or is there, some sort of goal that you have in mind from a culinary perspective?
you know, I as an overall goal, when I took on that culinary journey, it was always to make another person happy. So there was never a goal of opening up a restaurant or opening up a place. I mean, it would be great to open up a restaurant,
Yeah.
but the overall goal was always to hand the person a plate of food and just to watch them smile. If they're happy from eating it, my job's done. Like I could live the rest of my life just doing that, if it's my business or if it's a place where I'm currently employed and stuff like that. It's fine.
It's all about the experience for sure. And, I think that that's one of the beautiful things about the hospitality world and the world that you live in is you are doing more than just, sitting in front of a stove or behind an oven and cooking. You are bringing smiles to people's faces. And I want to kind of go even further into that and ask you, where do you think that desire came from? Was that perhaps a feeling that you said you grew up in an Italian household? Food was obviously important. Is that something that, you perhaps grew up being exposed to, whether it was your mother or your father? Or was it something else within you that told you that your purpose here is to put a smile on other people's face?
I think I've always been that type of person. I always wanted to give. Like if there was a person on the street cold, I'd hand them my jacket. It's just who I am. I think I was born that way. My parents still are extremely great people. Like they would hand anything away. So I think I picked it up from them too. Yeah.
Got it. I want to kind of make sure I take us in the direction of the show. I know that we had spoken a little bit before around the premise of Mile 40, and we talk about those moments in life where you bottom out. And if I think about, again, what it takes to run 130 miles or even just to run 20 miles consistently, which I'd say 90%, 95% of the listeners maybe, couldn't even relate to. There's a fire in you somewhere. And I want to dig into that and talk about at what point in your life did perhaps you start to build the fuel that probably carries you through the majority of these runs?
So the fuel is always a personal. It's more of like a personal goal. So if anything in my past that if I experienced any pain in my past or any personal issues, I would use that as fuel now. And I view running as a positive outlet. So rather than using anything that happened in my past for something that isn't positive, I chose to just put a pair of sneakers on and run forward with it. So I use anything from my past. And even now too, like if I have any issues now or if there's any stress in my life, I always put that towards the running. So my fuel is definitely anything that is that's wrong happening in my life or anything that usually you would look down to. I use that for something positive.
Got it. You've used your platform as a runner to raise a lot of money for the Crisis Center. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Long Island Crisis Center, I reached out to them about 2 years ago. They have a 24-hour hotline, 7 days a week. Like if you feel any bit alone or if you want a person to talk to, you just call there. And there's people there all the time. They'll answer the phone. And I thought it was very cool to find this place that's very like grassroots. They're in a building, like if a car drives by, the whole building shakes. It's very old. And it's just like a room of people who just are there for others. I think that's where I became very connected with them. And I wanted to raise money for them. But really, I wanted to raise awareness for mental health. So I called them up, asked them, and they were cool. At first, they thought I was joking. They were like 130 miles, went out to Manhattan. Like, is this a prank? I'm like, no, no. So, and then from there, it was just great. They were like family. They opened up very good. Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about your own mental health journey?
Yeah. So, COVID was a cool. I look at my struggles as a cool way of living because I'm able to just like take all my issues and face them. I look them right in the eye, and there's nowhere to run. Like you're looking right at it. There's nothing that you can do, and I just chose to face everything from my past and say, you know what, there's no more running from it. I'm going to run with it. So, a big issue from my past was my older brother. When I was younger, he molested me for about 2 to 3 years. And that's something that I buried for years. There was a time where I totally forgot about it. But once COVID happened and I didn't have tickets going beep, 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 and I was cooking every day. Once COVID happened, I didn't have anything in that way to to help me kind of hide the past. So from there, it unraveled for like 2 weeks. It was probably the worst 2 weeks of my life because there was nothing to do and I didn't know how to handle it. And then I said, you know what, let's go for a walk. And when I was going for a walk, I ran a block, walked the block, and it just grew from there. That's how I faced that.
Yeah. I just want to take a minute to reflect on that because I feel like you just shared something very personal, and something that was with you for a while, and something that you admittedly suppressed. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there listening to this, and people who go through life normally on a day-to-day basis, who maybe put things behind them, who have a lot to learn from just the last couple sentences that you shared around your journey with something that is truly impactful in ways that is unique to the individual, right? Like everyone would handle experiences like that differently. And I applaud you for just owning your journey and for being a light for others and now using it to help others. And that's very commendable and something that's not easy to do by any stretch of the imagination. And not just from the fact that you are taking on these incredible runs that are physically very difficult to do, but you are tackling mentally and emotionally a scar that several people out there may be going through something similar. And I just want to say thank you for, A, sharing and B, shedding a light on your own journey. How long did you have it kind of bottled up for?
It happened when I was like 8 years old until about maybe 11 or 12. So I'm 30 now. I started running 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So it was for a while, for a long time. And I think now that I look back and I reflect on those years in between, if I were to have had the opportunity that I had during COVID to look at my past and I had the mindset that I have now to kind of go through it, I probably would have had a better life. Well, I don't want to say I would have had a better life, but I would have understood what I was doing and probably enjoyed part of my life a little bit more. So if, I don't know, if I can give any advice to anyone, is that if you have something bottled up, you have to let it out. You have to face it, and you don't have to let it out to another person. You can look in the mirror and let it out to yourself, So I think it's what's within has to come out, and whatever's inside once it comes out, it's able to breathe. And once something's able to breathe, then, it's able to be, uh, it's able to be worked on. It's able to be looked at. It's, as humans, or as people, we're expected to hold stuff in. We're expected to have this image, look a certain way, smile when you don't want to smile, and I think that's a lot of pressure. Well, for me, I can only speak for myself. That's a lot of pressure. So I just I don't I don't necessarily hold myself to a certain image anymore. Like if I look this way today, I look this way today, and if the person across from me doesn't find it appealing, then I don't really mind anymore. A lot of my life in between, I was always worried about how I looked, and was always worried about who I was with, and I didn't really spend time with a lot of people. No clubbing, no partying, no hanging out on the weekends, and I think a lot of that stems back to my childhood. Yeah. So if I would have let it out years ago, probably would have enjoyed a little bit more of my life.
If you know me, you know that I like to look good and feel good. As an endurance athlete who trains daily, I need my wardrobe to fit the mold. Roan creates performance-driven clothing for your active lifestyle. Each piece is designed for versatility and made with integrity to outfit you for an active life lived on your own terms. The Roan promise is to help you move forever forward. Use code MILE40 for 20% off online and in-store for new customers only. Visit www.rhone.com, that's Rhone spelled RHONE, or find your local store and move forever forward starting today. Is the journey still ongoing? Just to give context to the listeners out there, for someone who might be going through something similar, who maybe hasn't addressed it yet, or who's hesitant to address it yet. Can you give some context now that you've done a lot of the work to address it? It's not necessarily fully behind you, is it? Or is it something that's always going to be a part of you, but you now know where it goes in your pocket of emotions, of your mental thought process, and your journey from here on out? Obviously, it's probably impacting you in different ways now than it was over the last 20 years before you addressed it head on. Can you speak a little bit to where that part of your journey is now with you?
Of course, I believe I am who I am now because of what's happened in my past. So I'm not saying if I had a choice to go back, would I do it all over again? No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And now that I've faced it, I've worked through it, and I've run along with it, at my own pace per se. I've It's always going to be a part of me. So it's hard to explain, but for my older brother, I forgave him internally, not face to face, because that's just the route that I chose.
Yeah.
But internally, I was freed once I forgave him. I said, you know what? He probably didn't know what he was doing, and I forgive him. And I hope he lives the best life. I hope he's happy and healthy. And I hope if he ever has a chance to have a family, that he treats them with love and care and respect. And I hope he is still in contact with my parents, and that they have a good relationship, and with my sisters as well. And I think a part of that, just saying it now, is very freeing. Kind of just, it makes me a better person to forgive a person who's done bad. And it makes me understand, nobody's perfect. People do make mistakes. I'm not saying that what he did was right, but
Yeah.
so after going through it and forgiving and running all these miles, I still use part of it. Like if I'm in a pain cave, if I'm at mile 90 and I'm done, I'll think of my brother. It's sick. It's a bad way to think, but that's me using this as a positive outlet. and making it a positive thing. And I could have easily taken it and used it as a negative and have done bad.
Yeah.
So I think whatever happens to us or what has ever happened to me, I'm choosing to use it for a positive outlet rather than doing anything bad to anyone. I'm going to do good with it.
It's a true testimony to the incredible power of forgiveness and for yourself more than anything else. And a lot of times people think forgiveness is about the other person, and it's not. It's not about the other person. Forgiveness is the first step to moving forward for yourself. And
Yeah.
so that was, yeah.
It's I believe it's your choice to forgive them. It's their choice to forgive themselves, and it's their choice to forgive you too. Yeah.
Yes,
So
absolutely. I don't necessarily want to leave this part of the conversation so quickly. I want to make sure that you have your space if there's anything else around this experience that you want to share. But where I want to take this is I want to now kind of move back toward what you've been doing more recently. And I want to dig into, do you feel this is a responsibility now to empower others to address their own struggles in their own way, not necessarily in a way that you may think worked out for you, because a lot of this, when I go back to my platform and I think about Mile 40 and what it represents, it's in those moments where you kind of unleash a superpower. You realize that you can face the darkest demons in your life, which clearly you're now doing and addressing in your own way, in a very similar way, on your ultras and during your training runs, right? But the other thing that it does, and one of the other things that I really drive home, is you unleash a purpose, right? Purpose is unleashed in your most uncomfortable moments, whether they're physical or emotional, because then you realize what your true potential is, what you're truly capable of. I bet you 6 years ago, you didn't think you could run 10 miles, let alone 100 miles. And then now you realize what you're truly capable of in the treachery of, the pain cave, right? Of that 90 miles in, right? And so in my own experience, I realized at mile 40 that I have a purpose to show others that barriers can be broken, or that whatever it is that they want to accomplish in life, there are ways to tear down those obstacles. And I want to give them my formula, because all throughout my life, I held on to this formula of patience and perspective and purpose as being the tenors for me. Do you see something similar in your own experience around revealing a purpose? Because it appears like on the outside, you're living that purpose now. But let's confirm that for the audience, and let's dive into that a little bit more around, now that you are where you are, what can you say about your purpose here on this earth?
Man, my now that I've opened up those doors and I've walked through them, now I stand on another side. And this side that I'm standing on is a side where I'm aware that people are watching. I'm aware that people are around me and people have eyes and people are going to see every little thing that I do, if it's on a phone or if it's in person, and that it's my job now to live my life as healthy as I can, as happy as I can, but to also show others who are watching, who choose to, that nothing is easy. Like, you have to work hard for this. So if I post on my story, I ran 18 miles today, or ran 20 miles today, or I ran 22 today, like, I know whoever's looking at that is going to say, all right, I got to get up and go for a run, or I have to go to the gym, or wow, this guy's crazy, or like just those little things that people see. I believe that's a purpose now. So to kind of set some sort of example that every day I'm pushing myself. So I could have easily sat on a couch and chose to not do anything, but I believe it's important to show others that even though you don't want to do it, you should do it. And it's also a purpose to make people happy, and to just enjoy life, and to not to dwell on any issues either. And another purpose is to not stress. Stress is something you allow in. So if you want to allow it in, but you don't have to.
Rest is under your control, right? It's all about controlling the controllables.
Yeah. And any conflicts from like my past, I think I explained it before, but if there's any conflicts that are if there's no attention to a conflict, if you just let it sit there, it's going to grow and grow and grow. It's like a seed planted in soil, and rain, there's just a cloud over it, and you're not aware of it. And there's no umbrella around, nothing. And that seed just keeps growing, 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 and growing. And that problem that you decided to push to the side, it's going to grow, and it's going to get stronger and stronger. And one day it's going to get so big that if you don't have what it takes to face it, it's going to be hard. So you're better off looking at it right now while it's still a planted seed and it hasn't sprouted yet, and just go in and pull that seed out.
You know, I as someone who trains regularly, and who's running a lot and keeping up a regimen, I'm constantly leaning into my sources of motivation and inspiration. Almost all the time, I'm going back to, the heart of my own journey. But then there are periods of time where I look at someone such as yourself and your journey, and I see what you're doing. And it quite frankly fires me up to get out there myself. I want to ask you, do you have any external sources of motivation or inspiration now that you've kind of leaned into running? Because I have to imagine, despite the fact that you're doing tremendous feats from a physical perspective, and what you're doing is borderline superhuman. I will say that. I have to say, I'm sure there are moments where, aside from the pain cave, where you're thinking to yourself, man, like this is crazy. And you've got to be looking for some sort of other motives or products of inspiration, for that matter. So is there anything externally that you kind of lean into for inspiration, whether it's someone you look up to, or someone who you've read a lot about, or a story or a journey outside of your own?
Honestly, I'm not a very motivation isn't something that I look towards. I'm more of like a driven person. So drive is really the drive is really everything that I'm using. As far as like, if there's like an inspirational speech, or if there's anything playing online, I don't even have headphones in half the time I'm running, or more than that now. So it's more of internal drive. There isn't really much. I mean, there's some great books out there that people could read, and I do believe that there is a use for all of that, to have to push a person off from a spot, or like if you're in a regimen, like you said, and you just wake up one morning like, I do not want to move. But I do things like I put Post-its everywhere, like all around my house. I have Post-its on my bed, Post-its on my floor, Post-its on the ceiling, Post-its on the window. And they just say small things like, if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. Or there's actually one up there, and it says, if you don't finish what you started, then you'll be just like your brother. So
Let's go, man. I mean, just listening to you say that got me fired up, because David Goggins, like, that is some David Goggins shit right there. He talks about the accountability mirror in his book, Can't Hurt Me. Same exact situation where you get the Post-its up that wasn't written by somebody else. It wasn't some sort of poetry. No, it's just black and white. And it's like, just get out there and do the damn thing. And if you don't, you're no better than the other person. And that's all. That is the perfect answer to this question, because this wasn't trying to dig for, an author or an influencer or anything like that. But what you're doing is just truly special from a pure physical standpoint, right? And so, what I try to get at in these kind of situations is the fact that hopefully you'd agree with me. It's 80% mental, 75% mental, and 25% physical. And, you got to drum up where that mental is coming from.
Yeah. And a lot of that mental, there's another percentage. It's rest. If you don't rest, you don't have like your body could keep going.
Yep.
That's one thing I've learned from this is your body can keep going, but if you don't rest, your brain is poo poo. Like it doesn't work. Like and I say poo poo because that's exactly what it is. It's just, it does not want to move. Your brain, the strength that your brain needs to understand what your body's going through, it takes a lot more energy than your body actually needs. For me, I eat for my brain because my body could just keep going. It's more mental for me. So you're right. 80%, 20%.
One of the things I love about you, Chris, is like, you're such a normal dude, right? And like the average person walking past you on the street is probably not going to know who you are. They're not going to know the burdens that you've carried. They're not going to know that you're knocking out, 20-mile runs on the regular, competing ultras over 100 miles, running from Montauk to New York City. I don't think you even really care that they don't know. But at the same time, you're truly like shining a light on the fact that there are so many normal individuals out there going through their lives, doing extraordinary things, and facing on their adversity head on. And when I say head on, I mean at the right place at the right time for them. And you're a true shining example of that. And so I want to make sure you know that and you hear that from me. I'm extremely proud to have someone like you on the show. And I want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm happy you had me on. This is great. Yeah.
You got it, man. Before we close things out, I want to give you the floor for just a couple of minutes or, whatever is appropriate, around what you have on deck right now when it comes to some of your running goals. And if you can give us some advice, right? You're a chef, you've been in the kitchen for a while and you're doing tremendous things from a physical perspective. Give us some advice from how you fuel around this.
All right. So upcoming races, I have a 100-miler up in Virginia. And then in January, I don't know the exact dates yet, but I'm doing the Montauk to Manhattan run again. And then I do this one run. It's 888K, which is 551 miles. This is up in Vermont. I attempted it last year. I only got 312 miles of it. But I'm doing that again in May. So that's my lineup right now. And as far as fueling, eat when your body tells you to eat is really what I'm going to say. I don't do the 3 meals a day, 6 meals a day. I have to eat this. I need to take a picture of this. I don't do macros. I eat predominantly plant-based. And I eat when I want to eat. If I want to eat at midnight, I eat at midnight. If I want to eat at 1 a.m., I eat at 1 a.m. Sometimes I'll fast. Sometimes I won't. I drink a lot of water. And I keep it simple. That's what my mom taught me. So I'm just going to keep doing that. She always said, keep it simple, stupid. And that's kiss all the way down, So during a race, though, I'll throw anything in my body that I can, but I won't do anything like I see guys eating big sandwiches. They eat like rice and beans. They're eating a lot of fiber. And I'm thinking in my head, hip, sip, and nibble, nibble, which means like eat just a little bit, drink just a little bit, eat just a little bit, drink just a little bit. I'm a snacker so during races, I'm just snacking Cheez-Its, a little Coca-Cola here and there and stuff like that. It just keeps me going. small little treats here and there is like the best way. You have to be comfortable and happy, but you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable too. So yeah, it's good.
I love that, man. That is quite honestly the perfect way to end this episode. We covered so much in such little time. To the listeners out there, take a look at Chris, follow his story. Chris, are you still fundraising?
Yeah, it'll start in January. If you follow me on Instagram, Chef Christopher LaMagna, LaMagna, you'll find me on there, and I usually post stuff on Instagram about it.
Awesome. Yeah, and to the listeners again, just lean into this. Chris was recommended to me by a mutual friend. We didn't know each other prior to this recording. I looked up his story. I read the news articles. I saw that there was something that was really special about him. But in speaking to him, the one thing that truly stands out, Chris, is you're just as normal as they come, man. You're like so special for the fact that you are an example of you are owning who you are as a person. You are yourself day in and day out, and you are leaning into your own lessons in order to inspire others. So thank you so much for coming on today. It was a pleasure to have you on, and I can't wait for the audience to lean into this episode.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.